What lie were you led to believe until growing up? That moths were the ghosts of butterflies. Cheers for that one, Dad. When I was but a wee lad, we helped Dad cut down trees. Big trees. He was always worried about which way they would tip, so he would pace out a length of rope, tie it to a tall branch, and have all the kids pull as hard as we could to help the tree fall in the correct direction while he worked the chainsaw. You sit on a throne of lies. He used rope so that he knew where all the kids were and paced it out so that even if the tree fell at us, we were far enough away to not get hurt. Greatest safety lie ever, and I can't wait to lie to my kids in a similar fashion. When I went to a camp, my mum agreed to take care of my hamster. Hamsty was the best cuddliest creature and enjoyed playing with me. When I came back, Hamsty was a wild owl, biting my hand. Because my mum didn't play enough with him, he went feral. Turned out he didn't go feral after all. Our family dog ate Hamsty, and mum replaced him with identical hamster. That people could flush themselves down the toilet. Once when I was 4, I had annoyed my mom enough that she said, "Alright, I guess I'm gonna go flush myself." I ran into the bathroom after her, only to find the toilet flushing and her gone. She was laughing behind the shower curtain as I cried into the toilet. I was told that girls grew hair under their boobs, like armpits. It didn't sound right, but I didn't know enough about it to dispute it. My mom and aunt always told each other how handsome I was and that girls would be lining up at the door. I was quite young and my uncle was babysitting my sister and I. First lie was that they used some sort of liquid to make dirty diapers edible and that we had both been eating dirty diapers for years. Second, he told me about a great trick we were going to play where we would get my sister to go to bed early by having me run up and down the hallway with her until she became exhausted. We both laughed when our plan worked perfectly. Then, he excitedly told me I was going so fast that I should just keep going and see how many laps I could do on my own. I remember getting momentarily angry when I realized what he'd done, but I was falling asleep by then, so I couldn't do anything about it. I grew up believing the President, Bush, called my dad every day to make sure his watch was set correctly. I told my teacher this facepalm. My dad also taught Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan everything they know. That teachers don't gossip about students. When you are an adult and see your friends become teachers, you know very well they talk about the pupils. My aunt and uncle told us that kids weren't allowed in Blockbuster after 8 p.m. because my sister and I could never decide on a movie. What made it believable was one time we saw a younger kid getting arrested outside the store. My uncle told us it was because it was after 8 p.m. Took way too long for me to catch on. I had a stuffed squirrel, taxidermy, on my wall when I was a kid. My dad said I could not touch it because it was toxic if I got it on my hands. I have always been very careful when I have moved it around and washed my hands real good unless I used gloves. When I was 28, I learned that he said it, so I won't ruin it by petting it. Still washes my hands after moving it. While working on the cars or in his workshop, my dad would often initially turn the wrench the wrong way. He would look me in the eye and say, "Sometimes you have to tighten them up a little before you can loosen them." A few years ago I said it to one of my own teenage boys while helping with his car. His response was, "Dad, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard." For over 30 years I hadn't realized my dad was just covering up for the fact that he was turning the wrench the wrong way. That the ice cream van siren means they are out of ice cream. My dad told me that when I turned 10 the gypsies would knock on the door and take me away for a year to teach me about their way of life. I know I was unsure he was telling the truth, but he went so all in on a lie over the months preceding my 10th birthday that I absolutely shat myself every time there was a knock on the door. I'm not 100% sure it was my 10th birthday, but definitely +2 years. When I asked my dad why Asian people had umbrellas open when it was sunny out, he told me it's because they have a terrific sense of sarcasm and they do it for laughs. I believed that for longer than I care to admit. That when my aunt went skydiving she brought me back a piece of a cloud. It was just a cotton ball pulled apart and sitting in a baggie. When I was about 10, my grandfather took me fishing. Being a 10-year-old, I caught nothing but weeds. I asked him if we could cook the weeds, which he replied of course. I go back to their house and watch TV while I wait for my delicacy pond weeds. Fast forward 5 years and I'm a high school freeman. One day the cafeteria served green beans. I thought they were lake weeds, so I bet my friend $10 that they were from a lake. I found out that I didn't eat pond weeds. My grandmother had thrown out the weeds and cooked a can of green beans. I also lost $10. For 5 years I thought green beans were actually pond weeds. I was told that A. If an ice cream truck plays its music, they have run out of ice cream. So only ever got an ice cream at shows when they were parked up. B. Jumper was a swear word and that I wasn't to say it. For context, my parents heard me saying for quickly, so it sounded like a swear word. My dad said, I know what you are doing and it's okay, but I never ever want to hear you say jumper. They got my friend's parents' family, everyone in on it. That lasted about a year. That it was illegal to turn the lights on inside the car while my parents were driving. That if I swallow chewing gum it'll stay inside me forever. Okay mum, while not the smartest idea, it does actually get digested eventually. As a child, there was this cartoon character I enjoyed watching called Johnny Bravo. The TV show would always give this number you could call, which you'd have to pay for, so you can call the show and actually talk to Johnny Bravo through the phone. One night, my mother calls me downstairs and hands me the phone. Whose voice do I hear? Johnny Bravo. I was so ecstatic to hear his voice and talk to him, and I was jumping with joy, and I kept that phone call going for as long as I could. I couldn't stop thanking my mother for calling the show and letting me speak to someone I had so much love for as a kid. Fast forward about 10 years, I'm in Spain with my family. It was late, and we were walking back to our hotel. Me, my family and friends of the family we went with were all talking about me, my sister and their kids, when we were all very young. To involve myself in the conversation, I mentioned how I spoke to this cartoon character I loved. Out of nowhere, my dad admits that it was him on the other end of the phone, saying it in a way like it should have been obvious and I should have figured it out. I didn't. I was completely heartbroken and felt a pain in my chest as one of my most precious childhood memories was crushed like it was nothing within seconds. Still love Johnny Bravo though. I didn't realize my grandmother was dying of ovarian cancer until she did. Everybody just told me she had a fever and I wasn't able to spot the signs like missing hair because I didn't know any better. I was 8. I was devastated. At this point, I get why my parents lied to me, but I still don't know whether they should have. It was a nasty shock. I can't remember how old I was, but we were driving somewhere and saw a truck carrying part of one of those prefabricated houses. I asked why the house was cut in half. My dad replied in a completely deadpan voice that the couple probably got divorced and they each got half the house. One day, when I woke up, my pet rabbit was mysteriously taken to a farm where he has more friends. I realized years later that he must have died for some reason and wasn't brought to a farm where he's hopping around with other bunnies. Growing up, my dad told me earwigs go into your ear, but they can't turn round to get back out, so eat through your brain to come out the other ear. I was about 18 sitting with a group of friends who laughed loudly at me when I found out it wasn't true. Got into a fight with a kid on the bus about Santa Claus being real. I was 13. In middle school, I got home all angry and my dad asked what was wrong and my response was something like, "Who does he think he is telling me Santa isn't real? What a liar." My dad just stared at me with a straight face and said, "I thought you knew he wasn't." My jaw dropped and I cried because up until then I truly believed in him. Now my jaw drops to think it took me 13 years to find out. But to be honest, if I can give my kids that kind of magic for just as long, I might. My mother would never let me try to fix anything around the house. She always said I would just end up making it worse. Whether it was a water leak, a toilet clog, a broken doorknob, she wouldn't even give me a chance. Foolishly, I believed her until I was almost 20. We were tight on money, so she would never hire any professionals to fix anything. Our house had so many broken things that it was absurd. There were broken locks, broken appliances, squeaky cabinetry, clogged sinks. It was awful. One day, I got fed up and decided to look into replacing a broken lock, and to my surprise they just sold door lock sets at Home Depot. I bought it and tinkered with it for several hours, and I ended up managing to replace the lock. I had no idea you could even think about messing with a lock without years of locksmith school or something. After that, I began to look into how to fix other things, and found out that most of it, while not easy, is totally within the realm of the average person to fix or replace. Last year my wife and I bought our first home, a hoarder den of your worst nightmares, gutted it to the studs, and redid everything ourselves. All those years of my life, wasted thinking I couldn't do anything about home repair, and now I can put a place together almost from scratch.